Dr. Tim Cowan is an Associate Professor at the Centre for Applied Climate Sciences, University of Southern Queensland. Now, his expertise covers seasonal climate prediction, the Australian monsoon and climate extremes such as heat waves and drought. And Dr. Cowan's research is part of the Northern Australia Climate Program, which aims to help northern graziers better manage the climate and drought risk to their livestock. Now, to speak to Tim today about the BOM's Weather Bureau's latest forecast for an El Nino later in the year, having dispatched, off you go, La Niña. Now, we're also going to talk to him about the controversy these predictions can still in agriculture and in sensitive markets. Okay, now, Tim, you're there. Weather Bureau, I have to tell you, still one of our favourite beating up boys or girls. We just want to give it a whack every now and then. What do you see as the long-range forecast for the farmers, knowing full well that they can't get to you?
That's good afternoon, Mike. Yeah, so there's two aspects here. One is what is the long-range forecast for El Nino southern oscillation. So we know that there's pretty strong model consensus across the international agencies for an El Nino this coming winter into spring. So that's one aspect. But the other aspect is what is the long-range forecast or long-range outlook for rainfall and temperature. And those two things, it's not necessarily a one-to-one. So it's not necessarily a El Nino equals drought and extreme fire risk. If we look at historical analogues going back the past 2 decades or so, there have been El Nino years where the winter has been dry, but the spring has been average. So I'm talking about rainfall and temperature. So there's those things to consider as well. So not every El Nino event is the same. But we do know that looking across the sort of 9 international weather agencies, they are predicting a strong likelihood of an El Nino this winter and spring.
And tell us what that means for Australia, and how long do you expect it to last for? You have to look into.
Yeah, so typically that means a drier eastern half of the country in winter and in spring, and that's pretty much the statistical relationship between El Nino and rainfall. That's the outcome. So you typically do see drier conditions. But as I said, not every El Nino event is the same. We have seen in the past El Nino events where it has been dry heading into spring, and then the summer has been relatively, I want to say mild, but it has been a normal summer. But it is looking like, if we look at the outlook from the Bureau heading into June and July, it does look like it's a dry forecast for much of Eastern Australia.
It just shows you how selfish I am. I hear that and I think there's still a chance of a barbecue. But I'm not on the land looking after the, trying to look after my livelihood and the crops or the cattle or the sheep or whatever. So did you say we'll be in that for about 2 months, 3 months, or is it going to last? Do we have these dry conditions going right through summer? I know that's a bit of a way away, but you're almost a fortune teller.
Yeah, well, as I said, El Nino's strongest impact on rainfall typically is in the winter and spring months. So the strongest relationship to rainfall is actually in September, October, and November. Unfortunately, we don't have the outlooks from the Bureau going out that far. We've only got the outlooks going through to July, and that is showing a consistent sort of story that we normally expect for an El Nino event, and that's for drier than average conditions across the east. And we're looking at a continuation of the severe sort of rainfall deficiencies for northern New South Wales and southern Queensland, unfortunately.
Isn't it interesting? When I was just thinking, as you were talking about the dry conditions up north, huge amount of rain. Down south, not so wet, especially middle part of Victoria and stuff, and South Australia. I wonder if they would ever revisit the idea of putting a big pipe. You know, don't have an opening on it, would just evaporate, but a big pipe that could transport all this wasted water instead of going out to the ocean or just becoming a puddle and drying out. Wouldn't it be magnificent if they could do that? Because then these dry conditions wouldn't be such an issue, would they?
Well, I'm not an engineer, so I couldn't really
Oh, it's
comment
it's a very hard
on
job
the
to do.
practicality of a large pipe, but it does speak to the I guess the unique environment that we live in. As you mentioned, I mean, one of the wettest places in Australia in March was in South Australia, which typically is one of the driest places in Australia. So there's been so much tropical activity over the past sort of month and a bit, which has led to Northern Territory and South Australia seeing really quite above average conditions. So it's been, as you said, it's been quite wet. The Channel Country in southwestern Queensland has flooded for the second year in a row, which is quite unusual. We sort of have to go back, to the 70s and the 60s to see sort of events like that occurring. So, but at the same time, we've seen the past 3 to 6 months, northern New South Wales, southern Queensland, starting to dry out quite a lot, and there's a real concern there from, as I said, from the agricultural community, from livestock producers who have to make that tough choice now whether to sell stock. Seeing the forecast for an El Nino, do they make that decision to sell early and then sort of cut their losses?
Yeah, it's an interesting to be in the land. You've got to have I think you have to be have skin like rhinoceros skin first of all, because it's a very tough gig, isn't it? And you're relying on the weather forecast. I did read somewhere today, I think it was a Weekly Times or something, talking about the long range forecast, and some of the farmers are a bit sceptical of it. And what do you say to those? I mean, because again, it's a part of Australia. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I know in Australia we really do like. There's two things we love to give a good beating to. That's you blokes and politicians. And so, what do you say to those that say, "Oh, bloody Weather Bureau couldn't get it right in the blue fit"? And it is unfair, but again, it's something that's been handed down from our grandfather to their children, and you're in. But so, what do you say? I mean, it's not. I mean, you can't be blamed, I suppose, for
No.
getting a forecast wrong. But you are always first port of call to get that box in the ears.
Yeah, no, you're right. Unfortunately, the bureau does tend to cop it, and it typically does happen when we're heading into these drier, the risk of drier conditions. And look, it's a tricky game, and it's not one which is just unique to the bureau. I'll take you back to 2017, which is quite similar to what we're currently facing. So. The Bureau back in 2017, so March, April 2017, were also predicting an El Nino event to occur, and as were many of the international weather and climate agencies. And and it got to the point where the eventual outcome was that it didn't eventuate, and we entered into La Nina territory. So it's not just a case that the Bureau sometimes struggles with the outlook. This tends to be a global issue, and it is becoming particularly hard to forecast. We're dealing with a probabilistic system, these forecast models. So they're predicting multiple possible outcomes, months in advance, and all it takes is one weather system to come through, and that can severely disrupt make a forecast going from a hit to a miss. So it's a tough game.
Yeah, I mean, you must take parties What do you do? I work for the Bureau of Meteorology. Ah! It's like doctors, never go to a doctor. Or doctors should never go to a party, so you should always go to a doctor if you're not well. But if you go to a party and you're a doctor, first thing, I've got this pain in my, you know what? And before you know it, the doctor's gone home. Otherwise, it's a free consultation. But I have to say, you guys do a good job. I mean, even your website, it's getting better. It's starting to work. You must be happy with that.
Yeah, well, that's true. It's one of the things that you know over the Christmas period, if you said you were using bureau data or you had some sort of affiliation with the bureau, then it was inevitable that the conversation would turn to the web page. So, and I get that there was a lot of angst around the change. People don't like change, and we get that. But I think over time, I think people are becoming used to the new site, where to find information that they could previously find quite easily. And look, everything is there. It just takes a little bit extra, maybe a click or two extra to find that information. But yeah, it is as you said, it's constantly improving, and it'll only get better.
Yeah, they had, even in Mildura, my hometown or home area, I lived in a place called Cardross. You don't have to apologise for not knowing where that is. But they, when I grew up there, when you had rain, it was like, woohoo. And they had huge rains. And it tested the roofs out and tested the patients out. They did lose some crops because of the amount of rain and then the humidity to follow with the grapes and stuff. But it's probably a job. The other job I wouldn't like is a air traffic controller, because you have to be exactly right. Otherwise, you see what can happen. Always a pleasure chatting with you, Tim. Tim, if somebody wants to find out, here's something for you. You must know the Weather Bureau website. If somebody wants to find out more about the weather, where do they go for that?
Yeah, they can go to www.bom.gov.au, and then click on the links to find the weather forecast, the radar images, the long-term outlooks, even the long-term trends.
Good on you. I appreciate it. Did your team win on the weekend, by the way?
My team is Geelong in the AFL, so I'm not a rugby person. They did win, but I'm sort of not so actively following the football at the moment. So,
Yeah, it's a bit. It seems a bit flat. My team, St Kilda. So I need not say much more. Although we did win. We did win on Sunday night in Adelaide for the gather round. So I'm feeling a bit better. But I think Geelong is going to do well. They always do well. I went to here's something out of the box of memories. I went to a Geelong game once, and I was sitting there, St Kilda playing Geelong, and that bloody cat, that cat mascot thing, flea-ridden thing, sat on my lap. But now as a St Kilda supporter, I have not gotten over that ever since that cat sat on my lap. And it's your fault. It's your mob.
Yeah, look, I can fully understand. I remember going to Victoria Park when Geelong played Collingwood there, and just being at that ground, it was an experience in itself.
But you got out alive, and that's great.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I didn't go to the toilet though, because you didn't want to go to the toilet.
That's right. Well, they didn't really, they didn't care where their aim went. It's just like if you're in the road, bad luck, buddy. Thank you so much, Tim, for your time. Good luck with the cats, and we'll talk to you shortly. This is
thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Cheers.